Hey everybody, quick heads up, I have to voice over this whole video. The audio turned out to be really bad. Actually, everything about this video is bad. The lighting is bad, the quality is bad, the people walking around in the background is bad, the fact that I spent money on renting this studio to get such a shitty video. I almost wound up scrapping the whole thing. But voiceover is kind of the only way I was able to save it and make use of this. So you're going to see my mouth moving, and you're going to see me doing stupid things, but you can't really hear anything that I'm saying, no matter how loud I make it. So I'm just going to voice over and give this little pirouette tutorial with the footage that I recorded in this studio rental. Otherwise it means going to waste. So this may be a good time to mention that I do take donations if you think my tutorials are helpful and you want to see more of them. I do need financial assistance to just, get to the studio, rent the studio, make the tutorial. It doesn't have to be a lot, even if it's like $5 for gas, whatever, any little bit helps. I'm just putting this in right now because I do have this at the end of most of my tutorials, but a lot of people don't stick around to the end of the tutorial, so they never knew that this was an option. So here it is, whatever. Let's get back to this tutorial. So I think I started out by saying that there is no one single correct way to do a pirouette, or rather prepare for your pirouette. There are multiple different variations and permutations of your preparation, and that is what sets you up for your pirouette. So this is more about informing you of all of your preparation options and things to think about and things to play around with, more than it is telling you how to actually do the pirouette. Because the pirouette, the turn itself, is just retiré. Just passé with your arms in first position. And I know you know how to do that already. It's just all the little steps and options you have to get into that position that you have to think about. So let's start from the bottom up. I'm going to inform you of all your options, all the different things you can do, starting with the feet, starting from your fourth position. So traditionally, when you first learn fourth position, your feet are as far apart from each other as one of your own foot length. So if you could plant one of your feet right behind your front foot, your back foot would wind up just as far as where your heel ends. That is your traditional fourth position. When you're preparing for multiple pirouettes, or perhaps pirouettes on point, some teachers will encourage you to have a wider fourth, which is fine, but you have to consider you will have to hoist your weight forward when you start with a wider fourth position. You can counteract this by keeping most of your weight in the front foot. Everybody is different. Some people prefer to keep almost all of their weight in the front foot before a pirouette. Some people prefer to distribute it evenly between 2 feet, but either way, no matter which way you do it, never have more of your weight in the back foot. You should have your weight either evenly distributed so you can get yourself up, or more in the front foot. I've been taught both ways, so it's whatever works for you. So right here, I spend the next 10 minutes literally just talking about the same 2 things I just told you about. So we covered thing number 1, the size of your fourth position, and thing number 2, your weight placement. Like I said, if you have a wide fourth, it may benefit you to keep more of your weight in the front leg. If you have a small fourth, generally your weight evenly distributed between 2 feet is the better choice. So these are 2 things that you have to play around with so far to prepare you for your fourth position pirouette. So the next thing to consider is your actual takeoff. How you're getting up into your relevé so you can do the turn. So this also has a couple of different options. You may be the type of person that wants to roll up into relevé, really push through all the little baby feet muscles, or you may be the type of person to kind of suck your foot up under you, almost like a sous-sus, where you it will almost feel a little bit like a hop. So there are 2 ways to do it. When you roll, you're actually shifting your weight over the foot, so your body has to meet the foot, or the other way around, where you kind of suck it under in like a little sous-sus, your body weight stays where it is and the foot kind of slides under to meet your body. So this is just another option that you kind of have to figure out what works best for you. Are you a roll-up or a suck-up? It is more common to see the suck-up where the toe comes in and replaces the heel in pointe shoes. That is because if you are to roll up in pointe shoes, you have this little extra bit of height, a couple of extra inches on your pointe shoe. So the suck up is kind of easier. It's kind of easier to bring that under you rather than to shift your whole body up and over to this new location. But again, there are different things that work for different people. I have seen dancers roll up in their pointe shoes as well. It's just, you gotta do you. Figure out what works for you. So whether you are a roller upper or a sucker upper, you still have to feel very lifted and straight on your supporting leg, but then this kind of brings us to option number 4 that you have to consider. Do you turn better if you visualize yourself lifting up out of your shoe or driving down into the floor like a corkscrew? Some people claim they feel the energy going up through their spine and out of the top of their head, and then some people say they really imagine driving their foot into the floor. So that's already like 4 things that you have to consider, that you have options to play around with, and we're still just working on the feet. Moving on to the 5th thing that you have to play around with. See, this is why I gave the little caveat in the beginning that I cannot teach you the single only correct way to nail your pirouette every time. I'm giving you all these different little things to think about, and all of these different points have options A and B. So you really have to take the time and figure out what works best for your body. So number 5, how you initiate your retiré. This may be one of the most important things because it's pretty unanimously agreed upon that in an en dehors pirouette, it is your knee, your retiré, that is taking you around. So how you get this retiré and establish it in your pirouette will probably be the biggest determining factor in your pirouette. So no matter how you get into your retiré, and I'm going to give you your options, your knee always has to feel like it's kind of behind your shoulder. So no matter what you do, your knee has to feel like it's leading the pirouette, like your knee is traveling behind you, and the rest of your upper body just kind of has no choice but to follow along. That's how you do a pirouette. I watch so many videos of so many dancers doing so many turns, and everybody seems to do it differently. One way I am seeing is that people have been kind of leaving it behind, like they almost leave the back foot there and almost turn into it as they go. Usually that's if they're doing many pirouettes. I was never taught that way. I don't know if that's actually correct. I was always taught to, like get your passé as fast as you can, like almost hit your passé before you even start turning. The only reason I can think for kind of turning into your passé rather than collecting it before you start turning is for these people that are doing like many pirouettes. Maybe they're just taking so much force and so much momentum that their body almost beats their leg, if that makes sense. Like their body just gets there before they can hit passé. I also see people kind of like slide the toe up the leg, which I believe is technically correct. When you start learning your passé or retiré, you generally slide it up the leg. I always kind of just like cut the air. I just bring it from back to front. I don't leave it behind, nor do I slide it up my leg. So you kind of have to figure out what works best for you. So when you're like first learning how to turn, you're probably not even conscious of all of these things. You're probably just thinking about like, whatever I gotta do to get around. It's, you just do whatever you can. But once you start getting more comfortable with the actual turning and it's not so scary anymore, then you can start really focusing on what works for you, what feels best on your feet, on your knees, on your placement, what makes you the most stable, what gets you around multiple times. So on just the lower body, I already gave you 5 different things to think about, and that was just getting from fourth to passé. We didn't even start doing the upper body yet. But before we move on to the upper body, I want to leave you with some little hints of things not to do. No matter what option or like mix and matching thing you decide to do in your preparation, these are things that you universally should not do, just because they're not correct and you could hurt yourself. So don't roll in on your feet or with your knees in your fourth position. That's more like an injury thing. I mean, it looks weird, but you could also just hurt yourself and twist your joints. So maintain your turnout, especially the front foot. Don't turn that in the split second before you start turning. This is important. I see a lot of people do this. It looks like they're going to start like a nice pirouette, and then right before they start, it's like their front foot just turns in. You actually want to do the opposite. You actually want to keep that foot turned out until the last possible second, because it's almost like spring loading your pirouette. It's like keeping that resistance will give you more of like a snapback, like momentum later. How do I explain this? It's like when you're winding up a little toy car, and if you keep it very, very tightly wound until the last second, it will kind of go farther. But if you were to like wind it, and then wind it back the other way, it won't go as far. So it's almost like you want to keep that turnout, like keep it tightly wound, and then at the last second, it will help kind of like give you momentum in your turn. So don't turn it in. Let the body go, and then the heel will follow. Another thing you want to avoid is overcrossing your passé. I have a lifelong habit of doing this where it's just low and it can throw your balance off because your hips are uneven with one low leg. I try to fix this. Sometimes I imagine just like scooping my leg up really quick, just scoop it up like a pooper scooper. I don't know, that sounds really gross, but just whatever it takes, don't make the same mistake that I make, please. Okay, I think we've mostly got the lower body out of the way, and I think we're ready to move on to the upper body. So your core. There are also a couple of different options, a couple of different ways to think about your core. Some people just feel kind of like an inhale, like they just take a breath and suck up and they go straight up and they become perpendicular to the floor, which is totally correct, totally fine, nothing wrong with that. Some people prefer to almost kind of tuck their pelvis a little bit. I think that helps them feel more compact, more closed, more condensed. If you tend to have a weak core or a very flexible back, doing this can kind of eliminate chances of you falling back or sticking your butt out. It's like closing your belly like a pocketbook. One of my first Russian ballet teachers told me to close it like a pocketbook, and I've always remembered that. Another option you have that I take advantage of is pitching your weight ever so slightly forward. If you're very loose and flexible like I am, this will help keep you from falling back. Speaking of back and your shoulders are actually working very hard during your turn. Your shoulders have to be pressed down, squeezing down with a flat back. Even if you're the type of person that pulls up and you imagine your abs going up, your spine going up, everything, your shoulders still have to press down. This is actually an intense feeling. You almost have to give yourself pain in your pirouette. So most en dehors fourth position pirouettes start from a third arabesque, meaning the arm that is in front of you is the same side of the leg that's going to come up from the back and do passé. It is essentially like having one arm in first position and the other in second position. Some teachers may keep the rounded arms as part of your preparation and then flatten your hands in allongé before takeoff, but like 99% of the time pirouettes start with like an allongé arm. Now, there are some methods or some styles where instead of bringing your arms into first position, they have you cross your arms. This is like a Balanchine thing. This is a very stylistic thing. Whether or not you cross or hold first position, you still have to keep your elbows very lifted. You can't just drop your elbows because then your arms will get weak and you won't engage your back muscles. It's also important to keep your arms strong so that you don't like leave them behind in your turn and then you're left with this weird like rocking a baby position instead of first. So a little tip I have for that is like imagine that you want to clasp your hands together, like a really strong like clap right in front of your body, so that way it will ensure that your arms are right in front of your belly button where they need to be. And you will eventually start bringing your arms up into other positions, but let's not worry about that, just the basics today. I'm also going to advise you to resist the urge to wind up your arms before you turn. I know it's tempting to like wind up, it feels like you're going to get more force, but once you do that, you're not in a position anymore. It's not a ballet position. Your first position arm should not cross center. By doing that, you're going to twist your shoulders and it's going to screw up your placement. So if anything, you can imagine opening a little bit into like a demi-second. You can open into a second before hitting your first position, but don't wind and twist the shoulders. And finally, we made it. Your neck and your head, you have to spot. You have to keep your neck feeling very loose. I like to imagine that my head is just a completely separate entity from the rest of my body, that they're almost not attached to each other. They move independently of each other. I don't want them to feel connected because then you can start to get kind of like stiff and tense and it can really ruin your turn. This is the only pirouette preparation ingredient I'm giving you that doesn't come with an option. This one, spotting, is mandatory. So now for you beginners, with all those things in mind, we're going to go to the bar and start applying these little things to very basic baby turns. Alright, so when most teachers start teaching pirouettes, basic pirouettes, they'll have you come to the bar and place two hands on the bar, and this is where they have you just get used to transferring your weight from a plie to a relevé. So literally just transferring weight from 2 feet to 1 foot. That's the very first baby step they'll have you start doing. So while you're getting used to going from plie to relevé passé, this is where you will start taking inventory of your body and figuring out how wide do I like my fourth? Where do I like placing my weight? How do I cut my passé up into the front of my knee? So look, pay attention. Do you have a small fourth? Do you have a big fourth? Do you like your weight in the front leg? Do you like it right between your legs? Are you rolling up? Are you sucking up? What feels best for you? This is where you figure that out. And then from there you might start to practice just some quarter turns, just to get you used to turning to the back foot. So whatever foot is in back, that's the one that comes into passé when we do en dehors pirouettes. It is counterintuitive. A lot of the time we like to turn towards the front foot, but here we're going to pick up the back foot and turn in the direction of the back foot. And you can just do that as a little quarter turn and hold on to the bar, and it will get you used to hitting that position within your first quarter turn, and you can start bringing the arms into first position too. Just repeat, get used to it. And then you can try doing the little quarter turns without the bar, just the feeling of going up, just transferring your weight and hitting that passé position and getting your arms in first position. Just little quarter turns, just build up from there. And then if you need to go back to the bar, you can go back to the bar for half turns, add a little bit more of a turn each time, and you can do it at the bar, no shame. And then you can start doing full turns at the bar. So remember, you're turning towards the back foot, and the back foot actually comes to a passé front. Your pinky toe touches the front of your knee. And while you're at the bar, you should use this opportunity to stay on relevé and hold that passé as long as you can. It will set you up for more turns later. So when I do pirouettes, I don't know, I'm watching this footage and it looks like I take a pretty small or average fourth. I don't have the biggest fourth position. It looks like I do keep my weight pretty evenly distributed between both my feet, and I do see that it is pulling me back a little bit. I can see that I'm not very strong in my core. I do pick up my passé pretty quickly, but I do also see that I'm letting my passé cross a little bit. I think I could keep my weight a little bit more forward and I could keep my arms a little bit stronger, but I'm old and tired and out of shape and whatever. Just looks like these are the kind of things that I'm thinking about while I'm turning. And I'm not the best turner, but hopefully some of these tips can help you anyway. Last minute summary general blanket tips, and I do have a tutorial that covers these too. It's just like general tips for turns or something, tips for better turns. Your preparation is like 50% of your pirouette. You have a down before an up, you have an out before you go in, so just don't neglect the preparation. The preparation is what sets you up for your pirouette. So yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. I think I told you all of the things I ever think about. Besides, don't be scared. It's just a pirouette. I think the worst thing that could conceivably happen when attempting a pirouette is like a sprained ankle. And even then, like, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. You'll be okay. And that's really like not likely to happen. You're more likely to sprain your ankle just walking, if I'm to be honest. Happens to me all the time. So yeah, having all of these preparation permutations can be a little confusing at first because it's a lot to think about, but the good thing is your pirouette is like super customized just for you now. How cool is that? In ballet, we have so many rules that we have to obey and stuff, but now it's like you got this one thing that was made just for you.
Thank you, and stay salty.
Okay, so this is what usually happens for the people that don't know or don't stick around to the end. I say thank you for watching with a heart because I love you, and then the pretzel shows up because pretzels are salty and I'm salty, and then the heart disappears and then the little Instagram clouds come up and they give you my Instagram handle and it tells you to follow me so that you can see all my selfies and make me Instagram famous so that people can pay me to do whatever I want in ballet and then, you know, be famous or whatever. And then when that disappears, I save the donation slide for last because I don't want to push this in people's faces. I don't want it to be the first thing you see. So usually this is at the end of my videos, and a lot of people miss this and they ask about it. That's why I put this in the beginning of the video this time around. So thank you and happy dancing!